G'day guys, it's Benjamin Morgan from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia, and I welcome you all this Wednesday, the 12th of January. Oh my God, where's the month running already? A brand new year and the day's already quickly starting to whiz by. And no doubt 2022 is going to be a very big year for general aviation. For a multitude of reasons, it's been a very tough couple of years as the industry's been navigating its way through this god-awful situation with COVID-19. But as we start to see that dissipate and get under control, we no doubt are going to begin to see a resurgence of aviation in the commercial, domestic and international world. And that's hopefully going to really kick some demand in and get things rocking and rolling. Obviously, a big shout out from the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association to everyone. We hope you've enjoyed your Christmas holidays and your New Year's break. And we're back into the world of advocacy and pushing for a better outcome for general aviation as we venture into this year. Some major reform initiatives are on the table for this 12-month run, and probably none bigger than the push to finally see the private pilot, recreational and private pilot medical reforms delivered that we have been working towards over this last 5-year run. And that just so coincidentally intertwines into our next guest for this evening, which is none other than CASA PMO, Dr. Kate Manderson. And Kate reached out today and picked up the phone and called AOPA and asked us if we could have a quick Facebook Live this evening to talk about COVID-19, but also some assistance that CASA is seeking from the industry itself. And so it's my absolute pleasure to welcome Kate back to the Facebook Live. Dr. Kate, welcome.
Thanks very much, Ben. Thanks for helping me out with connecting again with the AOPA organisation. I'm really grateful to be able to do that.
Look, it's not a problem at all. And obviously it focuses around the issue of COVID, which is something that it's touched the lives of so many of us. Got the little one with us this evening, and everyone can have a little bit of weight and a shout out there. But it's something that's touched so many lives across Australia. And I've got so many friends and so many colleagues in aviation that have been through this and are dealing with this and the impacts that it's had on their business. But no doubt it's also had a major impact on the Civil Aviation Safety Authority. And I imagine, Kate, you're being inundated right now with a multitude of calls, I imagine, on just about everything, on do I get tested? Do I not get tested? What do I do once I've been tested? Can I go back flying? And so maybe we might start this evening with a conversation about the broader impacts on general aviation, how it's impacting recreational and general aviation private pilots, and then maybe what we can do to help you.
Sure. Yeah. So in particular for GA pilots, I think my understanding, and I'm very grateful to hear from all of you guys as stakeholders as well, is it's about access to DAMEs and access to getting your medicals done. And once the medical's been done with your DAME, it's about how long is it taking to get processed. And that's been something that came up quite, it's becoming quite a critical mass kind of issue for us at AvMed. So the first thing that I wanted to really particularly raise is about the workforce impact at CASA. We are not unique in being an organisation that has ended up with staff furlough, that lovely American term, staff who are at home either with COVID or with family members with COVID who are isolating, who are just unable to do the work we need them to be able to do. And that includes assessing your medicals. So at the moment, we have typical workforce is about 5 assessors. At the moment, we've got 2. And one of those every day is on the phone. We always allocate someone to be answering the phone because we want to be able to respond to you when you give us a buzz. But because we've only got 2 of them at work, and this is Isabella, and she loves it when mummy's on Zoom, because we've only got 2 assessors and one's on the phone, only one human to be assessing thousands, literally thousands of medicals a week. And what that means is we'd be really grateful if we could have less phone calls coming in. Now, a chunk of them, I don't have the data. This is a today conversation. I don't have the data, but a chunk of our conversations are people ringing up saying, where's my medical? And I'll tell you how the conversation goes. Hey, CASA, where's my medical? Well, it's on my computer over there, and I'd be dealing with it if I wasn't on the phone to you. So if you'd be kind enough, if the reason for your call is to see where your medical is up to, please don't. Please give us the opportunity with our very few staff to actually process your medical rather than be on the phone to you about processing your medical.
Well, Kate, I'll jump in. I'll jump in. You know, what I've seen across the board in so many businesses, our own business with AOPA and even our partner businesses around us in the hangars, so many of the businesses are short staffed right now. We're seeing it everywhere. I went into Woolworths the other night with Laura, and I could not believe that they're operating on bare bones staff. And I would have thought maybe the staffing levels would have been a lot higher, but it really is impacting everything right now. And so I do imagine that you're no different at CASA, and we as an industry and as a pilot community need to understand that obviously we do want the information, but if we're making phone calls and that's then tying up the DAME resources and the doctors within CASA so we can't get the medicals processed, it's kind of, you know, stealing from Peter to pay Paul, and it would be impacting. So I really do imagine it. More broadly on the COVID issue, though, I mean, could we talk a little bit about the processes? I mean, the questions that I've been receiving from pilots is, you know, what happens? Do I get tested? Don't I get tested? You know, if I've been tested, can I go flying? Can I not go flying? Could we maybe talk a little bit about that, and then we might come back to some of these ADMED procedures?
Yeah, for sure. So, so first of all, about being tested or not being tested and whether I should or shouldn't, I really just redirect you to your local public health authority in your jurisdiction. If your recommendation, your guidance from public health is to get tested, then get tested. I'm in New South Wales. If you have symptoms, get tested. That's it. Now, what test you get? Do you go and have a PCR or do you go and have a RAT? Don't really mind. They've both got, you know, benefits and limitations. There's timing issues and turnaround issues with the PCRs, but they are pretty definitive. The RATs are more accessible time-wise. It's done in 15 minutes if you can get one. So, so get tested if you've got symptoms. Just follow your local protocols and guidelines. Now, in terms of flying with COVID, there's some correspondence that should be coming out from CASA directly to all certificate holders, also to DAMEs, but I've also sent that through to you today, Ben, and to you know, Qantas and Virgin and everyone about return to flying after you've had COVID. Now, when we had Delta, it was pretty nasty and it was making people really sick, and it was making it so that you really needed to see a DAMEs to see how sick you were and could you go back to flying. So that was where our original clinical practice guidelines were working, was to say you have to see a DAME to go back to flying. Now with Omicron, it's not as bad. Now there's still some people who are really sick, don't get me wrong, but I heard some data talked about today that 80% odd of Omicron cases are asymptomatic or very mild. You might have runny nose, sore throat, and then you get better. And you de-isolate at 7 days, and that's it. We've just changed our guidance, and it was sent out today to say that if you are well, if you have been well, if you had mild or asymptomatic disease, you don't need to see a DAME to go back to flying. We've published a self-assessment checklist that we want you just to go through, just to confirm you didn't have to go to hospital, you didn't have an oxygen requirement, you are currently well, you can breathe, all that kind of stuff, you know. And if you go through that self-assessment checklist and you're fine, go back to flying. You do not need to talk to your DAME, and you don't need to send your self-assessment checklist to CASA. Sorry. Hey, Bella.
You're right. That's okay.
Go and sit on the couch, please, beautiful. Half the centre of my unit.
This is a modern challenge, you know. We were in this environment where we're all working from home. I mean, this is just this is now par for the norm.
That's it. First female PMO. Here it is. So self-assessment, mild disease, go flying, you're fine. If you have anything other than mild disease, if you answer yes to any of the questions, you were hospitalised, you had oxygen issues, your saturations were low, you're still feeling terrible, you've still got symptoms, for God's sake, don't leave isolation if you've still got symptoms. If you have those things, yes, then go and see your DAME. But that's ought to be a very small proportion of cases with Omicron. So that's one of the things that we've been really happy to put it out there. Take away the barriers to return to flying. Please don't go and see your DAME if you don't need to. There you are.
And so that's a pretty pragmatic approach for CASA too. And I have to say that it's also probably a little bit refreshing, because it could have been most drastically in the other direction, which would have required a fairly stringent medical response. And so I think that's good news. And I'm sure for a lot of pilots as well, it's going to provide some clarity. We have received that information pack from you. We will be disseminating that information over the next couple of days and making sure that pilots get that.
Just to let you know, it's not on the website yet. Obviously, websites and IT. I think our IT people are at home with COVID. So, it will be updated on the website in due course, but that email is authoritative. And the form, the checklist at the moment, honestly, it's a Word document. I think we're going to post it as a PDF because our forms people are home with COVID. So it will be updated and all shinied and classified and so on in due course. But yeah, it's going to be there.
The advice is there, and we have clarity regarding that. And so we'll be doing our best to get it out there, and we'll obviously put it across Facebook and all the various groups to make sure that everyone understands that. I think it's also probably a good juncture as well that I would mention that if you haven't been vaccinated out there, guys, take the plunge. Make sure you get this done. I've got friends that are close to our family that have ended up contracting COVID. I had friends that got COVID prior to vaccination. They were very, very sick. And I've got friends now that have got COVID since the vaccination, and they've managed to get through with very, very mild symptoms. And so please do go out there, do get yourself vaccinated. Make sure that you've taken those steps and measures. You're not only protecting yourselves, you're protecting a lot of other people around you and being part of a responsible industry. So I would urge that. Obviously, another thank there from Alan Middleton. G'day, Alan. He's up north. Obviously,
Ben, before you go on, can I talk a bit about vaccines? Is that all right?
Yeah, no, you're welcome, Kate.
We're getting a bit of commentary and a lot of, not a lot, but a bit of correspondence from people who are concerned about vaccines, to the extent that they're starting to say things like, CASA is being irresponsible and unsafe by supporting vaccination and by not saying, not acknowledging that vaccines are dangerous or whatever. And I just want to reinforce for everybody that the vaccines are safe, they're effective, they have been researched. That little girl right there, where's she gone? Oh gosh, where's she gone? Anyway, that little girl, she's getting her vaccine tomorrow afternoon. My elder daughter had hers yesterday afternoon. So while I understand people have anxiety around vaccines, and there's we call it out anti-vax sentiment, and there's a little core group, I suppose, of anti-vax sentiment within the aviation community. And our response is going to be consistent, and it's going to get boring by people who keep coming back to us and saying we're naughty for endorsing vaccines. Vaccines are safe. Vaccines are effective. Vaccines are a lot better than getting the disease. And if you're worried about aviation safety and your own well-being in terms of flying effectively and being healthy to fly, get a vaccine, don't get COVID. So I just wanted to reinforce that. Please get vaccines. If you get a vaccine-associated illness, we'll treat that as any other illness. You're far more likely to get vaccine-associated heart disease or lung disease or brain disease, get COVID-associated disease than you are to get from the vaccine. I would much rather after you and deal with what is almost a much more known entity, which is a vaccine-related complication than the disease. Just please get the vaccine. Thank you for letting me say that.
That's okay. And, Dr. Kate, one of the other things that is often not necessarily discussed, and it probably does need to be discussed, and that is the average age. The average age of pilots in the recreational and private pilot space. We're dealing with men and women that are above the age of 60 years. You're entering that risk category the older that you get, and so it makes sense. And I might be 43 years of age, and and even at 43, there are risk factors for me at 43. But I look at many across the industry, and I think to myself, well, we've got to get on top of it. We need to get on top of it. Number one, for the health of the pilot community and the broader Australian community, but also we need to open up the aviation industry. We need to get our industry back working again and back being social. And I was reminded of this. We had an OSFLY, which is our annual get together and fly in. It's a week of activities and fun that we hold out in Narromine in support of the Narromine community, who've had us in and out of that location now for many, many years. And we're all getting excited about getting back up there to go fly in and set up our tents and talk to members and talk to supporters. But, over the top of that conversation is, okay, we've got to understand, we've got this risk with this vaccination and who is and who isn't. So we really want to see that the numbers are right up there. We want to make sure that we get our industry back out together, that we're able to congregate and get the energy and the excitement of aviation back moving. Not much more can be said on that.
No, that's it. Just get it done, people. Please just get it done. Yep.
Okay. So obviously this, all the interest and I guess the concern and the fears, people are on the phone, they're buzzing through to AvMed, they're tying up the phones. And I know we covered it off a few minutes ago, but we'll just cover it off one more time. And that is pilots, aircraft owners, pilots, everyone across the aviation industry. Look, we all know that we need to get a hold of CASA right now on these issues. And every single one of us would have the expectation we're going to pick up the phone and we're going to get that answer. The truth is that, in all honesty, the situation with CASA is no different to the situation with Woolworths, to the situation with local councils, the situation with many of us in the aviation industry. Finding the staff right now during the pandemic is extremely difficult. People are down sick, people are isolating, people are monitoring their health because they might be a close contact to someone, even though they're not actually COVID positive or have the disease. They're protecting themselves and the rest of their workplace. And so CASA's no difference. They're in this situation. The best thing that we can be doing right now is to be pragmatic ourselves and understand that if we keep banging on those phones, we're going to end up tying up the limited number of doctors in the AvMed department that are there to approve medicals, and it's going to backfire on us all and make getting those medicals approved a much longer process. So please, everyone across the aviation industry, we're doing our bit to help CASA at this point in time, and it's okay. Sometimes CASA needs our help, and sometimes we need CASA's help. And this is a great example of us working together. So hopefully we got that message out there this evening, Dr. Kate, and it starts to ease off a little bit.
I hope so. And I will let you know, we're not just sitting back and saying, oh, it's all terrible. We've got authorization to put on some temps, put on some casual people so that we can keep the work going. We don't want just to stop doing it. So we're going to try to get that workforce and get it covered so we can answer the phones and do the assessments. We're also looking at some IT stuff because, this is a recurring theme where people want to know where's my medical up to. And, there's a lot of things now that we have online stuff where you can see a breadcrumb of your medical is with the assessor, your medical is with the doctor, your medical is, 128 in a queue. We actually talked today about, well, how about we make it so that they don't have to make a phone call because they can just log on and see where their medical's up to. You might not like to see that you're a number 572 in a list of 8,000, but hey, at least you'll know and you won't have to ring us. So we're looking at this as what else can we do to make it easier for certificate holders to know stuff without having to get on the phone to us. So we're looking for ways to make that work, not just throwing our hands in the air.
Dr. Kate, like Service New South Wales, and I'd use New South Wales because I live in Sydney, but Service New South Wales have a fantastic app. You can bring up that Service New South Wales app. You can check your registration details, your license details, your recreational fishing details. There's so many things now that dock in via that Service New South Wales app. And I know there'd be many pilots right across the aviation industry that would be saying, hey, CASA, we need an app. We need a really smart iPhone app that you can actually go and see your license details. You can see your aircraft registration information. If you want to update your aircraft registration details, want to change the address details or your contacts or your emails, what a great way to do this. And it's feedback I also gave. I sit on our Air Services Australia consultancy panel with respect to modernisation of air services. And I gave the same feedback to them in saying, look, guys, it's 2021, now 2022. It's all about apps. We've all got these great digital devices in our hands. If we could build some really smart software, we could be improving overall, an overall service interchange between industry, regulator industry and service provider. So there's just,
absolutely.
I'd be remiss if I didn't raise it.
No, look, I'm grateful for you to raise that because, again, industry is going to be the driver for making that kind of change because it is expensive, it's time consuming, it's resource intensive to make that kind of huge shift in the way we manage information and we manage engagement and that IT kind of stuff. And if industry is interested in having an app and an online platform that's got an intuitive user interface and stuff like that, if I say, hey, can I have this, please? It's not going to be as important as if it's coming from industry saying, come on, guys, if New South Wales can do it, if the government in New South Wales can do it, perhaps CASA, we've got MyGov, we've got Medicare, I've got my Medicare card, all my health, my vaccine status
we can
online.
do it. It can be done.
It's doable. It's just about how much money you want to spend on it. And if that is the standard that's been set by industry for this is the kind of IT interface we're now expecting, we're accustomed to, then that's the kind of standard that anything that CASA does ought to be looking at as well.
Well, AOPA is happy to continue our advocacy for that. I'll bring it back up on screen. Stephen Herod, happy to respond to a tender to have that system built. Service New South Wales apps built on Salesforce, which is what I do for a day job. Stephen, reach out to me on my contact information. I'll just put it up on screen. If you send me an email, I'd be more than happy to take you to a meeting and introduce you to a few people and see what we can do in respect of that, because we do need to move these kinds of things forward. This is what AOPA is about. We're not only an advocacy on things like medical reform and engineering reform and changes to flight training standards and instructors and all the rest of it. We're also about everything to do with the regulators' interaction with the pilot and aircraft ownership community. So more than happy to take that forward. I've also just got a message here that's just come in from Mark, who I know, and Mark says, thanks, Dr. Kate and Ben. Wouldn't the current constraints on AVMED be an ideal conduit into self-assessments? And Kate, you had to have known at some point in time this one was going to come up, because when you reached out to me today, I think the first thing I said to you was, well, this could be a great juncture to just introduce self-declaration medicals, get rid of the Class 2 system entirely. Wouldn't that be a great outcome? I'm saying it a little bit tongue-in-cheek, and I promise you that I wouldn't want to, I said to you, I won't draw you into providing opinions on any of this. But why don't we use this as the segue into our next topic? And I think we've covered that COVID issue. I don't think we can really say much more. If pilots, aircraft owners, members, supporters want any further information to do with COVID, or they would like to clarify anything, what I do ask is that you do reach out, send me an email. I'll just bring it up on screen again. If you send an email directly to me, I'm more than happy to share those communications across to Dr. Kate, and I'm sure that we can get resolutions or answers on those. So there's my email address. Send it across and we'll take a look at it. Now, what I was just talking about is our initial phone call. And I said, Kate, we also have this very important piece of reform which is sitting in the pipeline for 2022. I was really hoping that Pip Spence was going to be able to announce the public consult for this in last quarter of 2021. But what she did do is she did announce to the industry via a very clear communication that there will in fact be a public consult on pilot medical certification. And of course, for AOPA, our advocacy in this space for the last 5 years has been to follow a US-UK model, which would see the introduction of a self-certification standard for RPL and PPL holders. Now, that would obviously come with certain constraints and limitations. We understand that. But we believe that it's time in 2021, now 2022, it's time this year to get it done. Maybe some feedback from you. I mean, the process is coming. How do we get involved in this?
Yep, sure. So, Part 67 of the regs is where we're governed in AVMED and all of the AVMED stuff, pretty much. So the Part 67 technical working group. First of all, I'll backtrack on that. Part 67 was written a long time ago, 1980s, I think it was, and there's been various attempts and opportunities to review it and update it over time, but it's never actually happened. So it's quite anachronistic in terms of legislation and what it does. It's very glitchy. It's challenging for us to work with as the regulator and as the specialist, because we have a bunch of stuff that it's hard for us to do. So some legal stuff and some technical stuff that's going to make it easier for us to work with DAMEs, for us to work with ophthalmologists and so on, that's going to happen. So the technical working group is a group of external stakeholders. So it's not just me, and it's not the CASA echo chamber doing its thing. It's external SMEs, aerospace medicine specialists from various parts of industry to talk about what Part 67 should do and say. It's not just a replication of ICAO and just dump it there. It's a bunch more other stuff there that's a bit more nuanced and much more tailored to what the Australian context needs. So the TWG has had 3 meetings now, and there's going to be one more meeting coming up through January. And And that's going to be fleshing out the details of all of those stakeholders to put it together. And I want to let you know, this is not just going to be the world according to Kate or CASA or PMO. We are gathering the information from those stakeholders and putting it together. And we're saying to them, is this what we talked about? Is this what we're happy with? And putting that out. Now, once that final draft is approved by those stakeholders, that then goes, of course, to the legal type writer, drafter, people within CASA, because that's what they do, to frame it into this is what we propose to be the new Part 67 legislation. That then goes out to public consultation. And that's where it's your opportunity, AOPA, Qantas, Virgin, whoever, RAOs, everybody, make your submission. Those submissions, so the draft of, look, this is kind of where we've landed with it, plus the submissions, that gets put together, and that's what's considered by the legislators, so by Senate, by House of Reps, by the people who make law. All of that's considered, and that then becomes the new regs, and the intent is for the new regs to be published by the end of 2022, and this is the process in the meantime. So as I said, hopefully the TWG will have its last meeting to get together, I think by the end of January. We're going to go out to the drafters through early Feb. I think the intent is for it to be out for public comment in March. So start prepping your comments and your statements and your submissions to then be finalised and then go to the drafters and go to legislation. I think September, October kind of thing is for it to end up in legislation. I don't know where it's going to land. I don't know if you're going to get your dream unicorn and rainbows, Ben. I wish you all the best with that hope.
We can do it, Kate. We can do it. We can get it done.
I'm not going to make anything get done. I am an enabler. I'm just going to see where it lands. And you know, the minister might decide, and the Senate team that look into it might decide that they like or don't like stuff that they're going to approve. And that's the way the law works in Australia. But that's the process that we're working in, and that's where we're up to with it. So public consultation in the next few months is what I expect to see happening.
Look, no doubt, with all this stuff, it's always a long road until it's done, and it's never done until the ink's dry and it's into legislation. So we very much appreciate the information that you've given us. We're going to continue on mission with this one. We really do believe in the empowerment that a reform such as a self-declaration medical would provide for this industry. There's no doubt that we see it as safe. We think that there's a fantastic safety case sitting within the RAOs itself, who've demonstrated that you have a safe ecosystem of pilots flying around. And I know there's arguments to and from, and first person to say that I'm absolutely attuned to it. But we do look at the success currently being enjoyed in the US, where the self-declaration medical has actually led to a resurgence in general aviation flying. And we're very fortunate at AOPA. One of our directors, Mike Smith, who's a former deputy director of CASA, who's one of the board members of AOPA, he has a business in the United States. And Mike, the feedback we're getting from Mike is tremendous. General aviation in the US right now is going full throttle. In fact, the general aviation flight training market is going gangbusters. General aviation maintenance is really rocketing along. Charter's rocketing along. And right now, the biggest problem is just finding people to keep filling this surge that's taking place. Australia is very much lagging. We think we need to really get the aviation economy here in Australia into gear. And some of those, admittedly, some of those concerns, Dr. Kate, are concerns that CASA don't have control on. We need to solve, importantly, some of these issues around the way in which privatised airport owner-operators are managing the airport assets in Australia and the constraints that they're placing on the aviation industry. And also some of the relationships between local councils and their local flying communities, and the attitudes that then fosters broadly within communities towards aviation. So they're issues that we need to be really vigilant on throughout 2022 and see some improvement to. And they're outside the CASA camp. And in many cases, there are a lot of people actually within CASA that are very supportive of the work that we're doing in that space. So that's quite positive and quite good as well. So look, we're going to be there. No doubt we'll be front and centre on this public consult.
Yep.
And bringing all of our tools and resources to the table, and obviously any information we can assist you with, and any technical working groups and stuff that we can continue to participate with, we'll also be there. So Dr. Kate, thank you so much for making time for AOPA this evening and for
Very
being able to pass on the information. Hopefully our members and pilots and aircraft owners out there have listened to what we've had to say tonight. Guys, CASA, no different to all these other businesses, including many of our own in aviation, and they're struggling right now, and they're actually asking the industry for some assistance. And I think that we can do this. We all understand the situation that COVID's placed us in. So if you don't absolutely need to speak with AvMed, and you can delay that phone call a week or two to give them some breathing space so they can get these temps in, they can get the AvMed system spooled up. Let's give them some breathing room. Let's do our best to support them. And hopefully at the other end of this, Dr. Kate, you'll have a system that's running like a well-oiled sewing machine.
Hopefully. Thank you. Thanks very much, Ben, and thanks for the opportunity.
That's okay. Always a pleasure, and we hope to have you back as we get a little bit closer to that public consult as well. We'll invite you back to talk through some of the aspects of that. So thank you again. Okay, well, that was Dr. Kate, a friend of the aviation industry, believe it or not. She's very supportive of aviation across Australia, and it's always a pleasure to have Dr. Kate on our broadcast AOPA Live to talk about issues that we're all facing, and obviously none more important right now than COVID itself. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Before we sign off this evening, I just wanted to pass on some information. It touches back on the topic of airports, and as many of you right across the aviation industry would know, I am absolutely steadfastly in support of our aviation participants, businesses, pilots, aircraft owners, the like, when it comes to airports issues. And I've spent 5 years of my working life now focused on these issues, probably more intently than I ever first imagined I would be. I often say to people, I'm the accidental advocate on these issues, but they are a genuine issue facing our aviation community. And we've covered those issues at Bankstown, we've covered the issues at Moorabbin, at Archerfield, Parafield, Jandakot, and many, many local council aerodromes across Australia where we've got problems taking place. And I really do want to make this point that the issue of airports is absolutely at the top of the priority list when it comes to the things that we need to address as a nation in order to ensure that aviation has a future. And at the centre of that has been the issue of the Airports Act. And there have been quite a many of us, including AOPA, that over the past few years have communicated clearly to the Deputy Prime Minister's office and to the Department of Infrastructure that it is our belief that the Airports Act is in fact incompatible in the modern context. It is not doing the job that it is there to do in order to protect the airport infrastructure for the aviation industry. And a great example of this is what we see taking place at Moorabbin, and we're seeing it take place at Bankstown, where we now have this wholesale non-aviation development taking place, and it is in fact displacing aviation. And I was on site at Bankstown today talking with a number of stakeholders, and I said to them, it's pretty easy to see what's been going on at these major privatised airports. They're using their large non-aviation development to bring in massive businesses. We're talking huge multinational companies who are prepared to pay staggeringly high rents for their big logistics warehouses and storage centres. And they're attracting those businesses in, and they're anchoring them onto these airports. And then what they're doing is they're then revaluing all of the aviation land to then be representative of this non-aviation commercial large multinational business footprint, and that is driving up the land valuations for the leaseholders, and in turn it's driving up rental pressures to record levels, to a point where aviation businesses just simply cannot afford to stay on these airport sites. And unlike a air conditioning logistics centre or warehousing centre, you can't just relocate an aircraft maintenance business to another business park. You can't relocate a charter operator to a business park. You can't relocate an aviation parts and supply business to a different business park and disconnect it from its customers. And so what we're seeing is that it is displacing aviation. It is artificially increasing the cost thresholds of running these aviation businesses. And this is driving part of the decline that we've experienced over the past few years. And so a lot of work from AOPA, a lot of work from other groups as well, pressures from the Minister's aviation advisory panels and various groups have all focused on the need for a wholesale change to the Airports Act. And so I received yesterday, and I just wanted to share a bit of this information. You have to excuse, I'm going to hold my mobile phone up 43 years of age, the eyesight is probably not as good as it used to be. Don't worry, CASA, the eyesight's good. I will pass my next medical. The communication has been received, and it says, to whom it may concern, Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development Communications is seeking feedback now on an initial package of amendments to regulations made under the Airports Act. These amendments represent stage 1A of a 4-stage process that the department is seeking to undertake to review and modernise the arrangements covered by the Act. Stage 1A will include amendments to the Airport Regulations 1997 and the Airport's Ownership and Interest Shares of Regulations 1997, and covers the following areas: 1, leasing and subleasing; 2, streamlining report timelines and relating to ownership; and 3, clarifying and simplifying language. A summary of Stage 1B through to Stage 4 is shown below. Stage 1B, modernising the Act to include examining the definition of an airport site and infringement notices scheme. Stage 2 will be streamlining the Commonwealth responsibilities, control of on-airport activities, and quality of service monitoring for reports and accounting. Stage 3 will be increasing the flexibility and modernising environment of protection, building control, and protection of airspace. And Stage 4 will be the legislative reform. Now, we've been invited to put forward consultation on this, and the cut-off is in fact 11:45 p.m. on Monday, the 7th of March. And I will circulate this notice via the AOPA website, and I'll also circulate via Facebook. And I would certainly be encouraging individuals, everyone right across the aviation industry, to consider taking a look at this request for public consultation and providing some feedback to it, because this raft of changes to the Airports Act will be vital at this stage we're at right now, because we're at a point at locations such as Moorabbin and Jandakot and Bankstown where some of the developments that are taking place are literally overtaking the vast majority of the airport sites. And if we don't slow it down and come up with a more manageable process, we're going to see further displacement of aviation. And so this evening, I just wanted to raise that public consult has arrived. It is a signal, at least. It is a signal. I do view it as a signal, and the AOPA board views it as a signal that we are making progress here, that there are changes. It's not the total solution, but it is in fact a step forward in at least a recognition that the Act is incompatible at this point in time and needs to be updated. It needs to become representative of the type of management that we need to protect the airport sites. Now, just on the issue of protecting the airport sites, I've invited representatives, key representatives, to a meeting at Bankstown Airport, of which I'm not going to go into the details of it here tonight, but I have invited those representatives to come to the airport to sit down and start having a very serious conversation on what is happening at these airport sites, not just Bankstown, but the airport sites all over the country, and to look at how existing aviation infrastructure is being managed and whether the investment in that existing aviation infrastructure has been sufficient. What do I mean by that? Are the airports that are being leased, are they putting enough money in to either maintain the existing aviation to an acceptable level, or has it been at a level in which we're seeing aviation facilities decaying and being run down? And of course, once they're decayed and run down, they just basically get rid of them. And unfortunately, that we've seen that at a number of sites where aviation facilities are disappearing and non-aviation facilities are popping up everywhere. We also don't want to see a situation continue where aviation facilities are in fact being used for non-aviation use. I can tell you that external to AOPA, I'm also involved in some aviation business, and through those businesses, we've been seeking to negotiate leasing at some of these airports. And I can tell you, we ourselves have experienced this, where you're continually told there's no space, yet when you drive around, there's empty buildings, there's empty facilities. They're just not being put to market to create an artificial impression that there's nothing there. But I imagine, I can't say this for certainty, but I would allege that there's no doubt that certain organisations might be representing that their airports just have no demand, and hence we see more and more non-aviation development. So it's a big issue. It's an issue we really need to tackle in 2022, which leads me to my last point. The Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association of Australia is an incredibly unique organisation in that we're out there having this fight with you. We're out there making certain that these issues are in fact advocated for. And I posted on Facebook recently, and I said to an individual who was challenging this discussion, I said, well, can you name another organisation that's actually actively out there every single day pursuing these issues down and seeking a dialogue and an engagement and a discussion? And we waited, and I think we waited. The reality is it's AOPA. Love us, dislike us, the realities are that we are there fighting for you. We're fighting for you. We're fighting for aircraft owners. We're fighting for pilots. We're fighting for aviation businesses. And we can't do this work without your support. And I understand that right across the aviation industry, we could all adopt the view that it's not my dog and pony show, someone else can take care of it. Well, if we all take the view that it's someone else's responsibility, whose responsibility is it? Now, I know paying membership fees to member-based organisations is always an issue where people say, I'm a member of this and I'm a member of that. And I understand, I'm exactly the same. I'm a member of a number of aero clubs out of support for them, member of AOPA, member of other organisations, and it chews a lot of money. But the realities are this. I'd like to challenge every single aircraft owner and pilot and aviation business this year into supporting AOPA. I believe that over the past 5 years that our track record now speaks for itself. We've been entirely consistent in making certain that key issues are being represented across the aviation industry. Now, we can't do this without you, and I promise you, we cannot do this without you. We need your support. It's $159 to pledge your support to AOPA and to back us so that we can continue to push forward for critical reforms like self-declaration medicals. If AOPA had not been pushing this barrow from 2017, who was? Nobody was. AOPA brought the issue up and we brought it into the discussion, and we've made certain that over the past 5 years, this discussion has not died down. Now, some appreciate that, some dislike it, but the realities are the work that we've done to advocate that has drawn and brought forward a result, which is we're heading into public consultation. And if we can do our job and we can continue to place the pressures and prosecute our argument as professionally as we can, chances are we're going to get a distance towards what we are seeking. Whether we get 50%, 70%, 80%, 90%, it's irrelevant in one context because at least we were in the fight and we were advocating and we were pushing forward for it. Because if we were not in the fight, it simply wouldn't get delivered. 2022 marks a year in which we're not only going after the self-declaration medical, but we're also pushing actively to see to it that the independent flight instructor is returned to aviation. We need the ability to get flight instructors back out right across our aviation community so that we can breathe life back into aero clubs, we can breathe life back into flying groups, and we can get more people into aviation. We've seen the success. It is undeniable, the success of RAOs in which reforming the ability for people to provide basic flight training to get people involved has resulted in growth. General aviation deserves the right to enjoy this growth itself. We shouldn't simply be forcing all of that growth into just one area, but instead what we need to do is we need to bring that growth right across the industry. And there is a way to deliver that kind of independent flight training solution to our RPL and PPL community to ignite a general aviation resurgence, to create growth, to create opportunity and economic success for the aviation industry. This can be done. And to do it, we're going to need your support. We're also going to be pushing in 2022 for the completion of the Part 43 engineering reforms. The Part 43 engineering reforms achieve much in the same context as an independent flying instructor. We want to see the ability for licensed aircraft maintenance engineers to get out there and to work without being shackled and coupled to a bureaucratic process that simply absorbs time and money and makes them less competitive and more expensive to the end user, which is you, the aircraft owner, and the pilot. So we're going to be pushing that and we're going to be seeking to get that reform done. And I appreciate that there are aviation businesses that are not necessarily as supportive. And likewise on the flight training side, I've already had certain flight training companies call me to say, Ben, I can't believe you would be pushing for an independent flight instructor. If an aero club out the back of that regional area needs an instructor, I will send one from my company. Well, here's the deal, guys. If we want to unlock general aviation and we want our industry to grow, we can't be building it based on economic protectionism. We've got to open the industry up. We have to embrace the ability for our industry to compete. We have to embrace the ability for our industry to move forward and to take action. And by injecting engineers and flying instructors and sending them out all over the country to seek out opportunity where they can find it and to build success, that is how we're going to get it done. We have to deregulate in order to make the industry work more efficiently and to make it work more profitably. And so we're going to be pushing for those independent flying instructors and the ability for those engineers to get out there and to work and to make a living. We're also excited because Part 43 will usher in the ability for aircraft owners to own and maintain recreational and sport experimental aircraft types on the VH register. The success of RAOS has shown that you can successfully and importantly, that word, safely own and maintain your own private aeroplane, and you can in fact do it safely. Now, I appreciate there are arguments out there on both sides. There are those saying you can't do this. There's arguments saying you can do it. Well, the realities are this: if we build a safe framework, if we build in the type of support, education, and inspection, we can make this happen. And so I've no doubt that we can get this done. And let's not forget, there are other leading aviation nations that are doing all of this, and they're doing it successfully. Let's look to Canada, where you can buy an old certified general aviation airplane. You can request that your aircraft be moved across into what's called an owner maintenance category, and you can put a big X on the data plate, and you can take your certified general aviation airplane that might be built in 1950, you can take it off the certified aircraft register, put it into effectively an experimental register, and treat it like an experimental airplane. Wow, that makes sense. Canada has not seen fatalities increase. Canada has not seen a disaster. What instead they have seen is a resurgence in people going out saying, well, I'll buy that old airplane, I'm going to do it up, I'm going to make sure it's safe, and I'm going to get involved in aviation. We need to unlock aviation. We've got to de-shackle away from all of this nonsense where we've locked and suppressed our industry down, free it up so that we can start to see all kinds of new opportunities for our aviation industry. So look, there's a few things that we're going to be focusing on, and there's still a myriad of others. We want to get a reform of the Civil Aviation Act. We don't believe that it's been pushed far enough. We want to get it pushed even further. Again, focusing on opportunity. We want to get that Airports Act updated. We want to protect airports so that they're here, not just for this generation, but for the next generation and beyond. We want to make certain that aviation remains a steadfast, determined, capable, profitable and important sector of the Australian economy for the next 50 years. And the only way to do that is we've got to protect those airport sites. We're going to be out there working with local government. We're engaged with like 30 councils right now. And, and here's the truth, guys. AOPA's one guy. It's me. Okay. We don't have a team of people working out of the Bankstown office. It's just me. And so when a member calls up and says there's a problem going on at this airport location, I have to stop everything and I have to focus onto that issue. And I'll do everything that I can on that issue. And then I still have to keep all those other issues rolling behind it. And so we need resources. We need members to support the organisation so that we can get another Ben Morgan and plug that Ben Morgan into Victoria and get another Ben Morgan and plug them in Queensland and so on and so forth, and build a national network of highly capable, passionate and determined, tenacious and relentless advocates that will be there to fight for you to ensure that we have a strong aviation future. Now, how do you do this? It's pretty simple. All you have to do is become a member of AOPA. Jump online. $159. And unfortunately, look, here's the deal. Because of COVID and because of the costs, we can't produce a magazine right now. And everyone says, Ben, I'm going to join AOPA. Do I get a magazine? No, you're not going to get a magazine. But what you got is you got a determined advocate who identifies and focuses on the key issues to deliver you the kinds of reforms that are going to make your access to aviation easier and more affordable. Is $159 a year not worth supporting to get self-declared medicals? Is $159 a year not worth supporting to get those independent flight instructors back out into our community? Is $159 a year not worth supporting in order to get the Part 43 reforms completed so that we can get the independent engineers out amongst our community and lower the cost of maintenance and ownership of aircraft? Is $159 a year not worth it to see an outcome where we can have recreational sport and experimental aircraft owner maintained on the VH register? And is $159 not worth it to ensure that you have a powerful voice and a determined person who's prepared to take our argument to the highest politician's office capable in order to see to it that our airports are not continually bastardised and that we have a future for aviation in our country? I'd have to argue that $159 is quite literally the best $159 that you could possibly spend in aviation, to know that you have someone who is representing you, who no matter what, we don't place financial interests, we don't place any selfish interest in front of it. You, the aircraft owner, the pilot, the aviation business and the aviation participant, you are our priority. We work for you. Our only goal is to ensure that you have an aviation future. And as Neil Burke has just said so eloquently here in the comment, AOPA membership is 50 cents a day. 50 cents a day to send me out, and hopefully in the months to come, some others, if we could pull together as an industry and join up, put some more people into this, have them out in every state fighting and really making a difference. And so I'm only going to do this once this year. I won't go to this extent on every broadcast, and these broadcasts will be kicking off as we move forward. But please, I'm working as hard as I can for you, and the work that I do for you on your behalf is changing your aviation industry for the better. Please get all of your friends, your aircraft owner colleagues, your pilot colleagues, your aviation business colleagues, jump online. It's $159. And you know what? If I can achieve half of what we set out to get done this year, that $159 will be the cheapest $159 you ever put into your aviation industry. And so with that said, I really do wish that, hope that everybody has had a wonderful Christmas break and a wonderful new year. Let's make 2022 the year that general aviation really comes back to life. I think that the odds are in our favour for a huge resurgence. I'm betting on big success for aviation. I think that we're going to see some spectacular reforms delivered by CASA this year. I hope that they're going to do it. I get a sense that we're close to it, and I think that we've got the right leadership team there right now, and that they understand that aviation needs an ignition. It needs the key shoved in and wound around. And if they can do that for us, I know that the aviation industry will really get moving and it'll prove itself worthwhile. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Again, thank you to Dr. Kate, who's sitting in the green room right now. Just continue to listen to me talk. I hope you all have a great week, and I'll be back next week. And I believe next week I'm going to be joined by Glenn Buckley to get an update from Glenn, and also we are going to be having some discussion around airports and meeting some airports people to further that. So thank you again, guys, and have a great night.